Let's stay with this story now and speak to political analysts, Dr. Ongama Mtimka and Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. Thank you so much to you both this evening. I'll start with you, Dr. Vilakazi. A lot of focus when you listened to, John Steenhuisen in his victory speech yesterday, and a lot of focus on the EFF. Is this a good election strategy?
Good evening, Bongiwe, to you and to viewers at home. You know, it is such a blow to actually pick up that tag that says the EFF is enemy number one, because once you do that, being a democratic alliance, you are obviously alienating a particular voter. And in this particular case, is a voter that is represented by the economic freedom fighters, which is a voter that really would like to see South Africa going into a place that is anti-imperialist, a place that centers, the worker, a place that centers issues of Black intelligence and Black economic radical transformation. So I just think it was really not a good way to say EFF is our enemy number one. Our basic objective in this newly elected leadership is to make sure that the EFF doesn't go to the union buildings. And it's not strategic. I think it's not strategic on so many levels because, one, the Democratic Alliance is an organization that has been struggling with issues of representation, right? And this election also is dodgy, in terms of who has become their top leadership. One Black man and one white woman who's always been in the leadership, right? Why not at least bring in, even if it's a white person, a younger version of Helen Zille, and also bring in, your Mpho Palates and so on. And I really agree with Mpho Palate here that it is their loss as a democratic alliance that they did not maximize her standing up and raising a hand as a very intelligent, skilled, Black woman in the country, given the dynamics around racism within the DA. And for them then to come and pick up a tag against the EFF to say, we are going to do everything that we can to take the EFF out of power, actually reveals the level of deepening phobia just around the issues that the EFF stands for. And it speaks, then it feeds to this narrative that says, the strategy of white monopoly capital has always been to divide and conquer, which has always been the message of the EFF. And they're clearly saying they don't want to see the EFF and the ANC working together. Why that fear? Why do you demonstrate it like that? So it's not a good strategy. I don't think it's going to work in favor of the A as an opposition, even in terms of them wanting to win, and get into union buildings in 2024, not at least as a leading party.
And Dr. Mtimka, when one thinks about, what they've said about the issues surrounding the current president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, you think about the Phala matter as well and various other issues that they've raised sharply in Parliament. But a lot of silence on, a lot of talk around the ANC just to say that we'll get it below 50% and we'll make sure we are the only big party that can keep the EFF out, among other things that he said. Does it signal what a lot of people have been talking about to say there could be a possibility of a DA-ANC alliance? That is why we did not hear a lot of talk on the front of trying to keep them out, like they did say with the EFF.
Sure, if I may, the EFF the Democratic Alliance, in my view, and as represented by its leader, John Steenhuisen, is doing three fundamental flaws. The first one is sorry, I'm getting distracted slightly by background noises here. The first one is to undermine the capability of the ANC and EFF coalition, if it were to happen, to process policy thinking, to arrive at a common ground of sorts that would result in the continuation of politics, or center-left politics at least. And that's a historical bogey, because this very same EFF that is pushing for nationalization was in Jacob Zuma's ANC pushing for nationalization at the Mangaung conference. And the ANC, not by stifling that politics, but by processing it, resolved not to nationalize the mines, but to upgrade the regulatory framework of the mining sector in the country and upgrading the Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act. So any suggestion that these parties together could create the kind of alarmist policies that John Steenhuisen is talking about is one devoid of history and undermines the intelligence or the ability of ANC-EFF alliance to actually arrive at compromises that would still work. I mean, if you look at the EFF's manifesto for that matter, despite their rhetoric of nationalization, you get a very clear sense that they still believe in an idea of a private sector that has a role as much as the ANC has a role. So to create this impression of a swart gevaar that would make South Africa another Venezuela is ahistorical. And then to come back to your question, the idea that the ANC is only going to have the DA and the EFF as coalition partners is over assuming how much decline the party is going to have. My view is that it's going to drop to the mid-50s, and there it neither needs the DA nor the EFF, and most likely may choose some of the splinter parties of the DA, such as Action SA, Rise, Busa, and them, which are more centrist in their outlook, and avoid the too much bargaining that's going to come from either a Democratic Alliance or an EFF coalition that may push them to the extremes of either center-right or extreme left politics.
Yeah, and very briefly to you both, because we're almost out of time, but Dr. Vilakazi, when one thinks about, the fact that even yesterday he talks about this moot-shot pact where they need to work together, as he calls other opposition parties and civil society to work together, he then says, expect an email from me in your inbox, come and work with us. Doesn't it sound like they would be rallying behind the DA as opposed to working together?
Of course it does. Of course it does. Without any shadow of doubt, Bongiwe. And that is what we are going to have to deal with as South Africans as we move towards coalitions. You can see that the environment is becoming even more and more fragile, right, in terms of political parties. I think for a leader like Steenhuisen to speak the language that he's used in this election at this day and time, a couple of months to go, clearly seeing the environment that is going towards coalition, like Ongama is saying, is really lacking context, it is lacking touch, and it's symbolizing disconnectedness to the reality of the political context in the country at the moment. And it's sad and it's shocking, in terms of where the political environment is going in the country, even as we go to 2024. My sense, Bongiwe and Utokotela Mtimka, is that South Africa, it's inevitable. We are going to coalitions, and I have said it before. I see a coalition between the EFF and the ANC, of some kind. And for a simple reason, as Dr. Mtimka is saying, there has been this narrative around economic radical transformation within the African National Congress. We know that Julius Malema and what has become the EFF today emerges from that school of thought. And all what is a disconnect here and a discord is how to really get to a place of land, for example, in radical economic transformation, comparatively to how some of the voices who are not aligned to the red faction within the AC have been thinking. Once they find themselves in that conversation, it's going to be flames and positive flames in this regard, not the flames that Steenhuisen spoke about, because he actually spoke about the fact that if we do not want to see the country burning down, put the ANC and EFF together. But I think it's the opposite effect.
And Ongama, I'm going to give you the final word here, but let's talk about another story that's making headlines. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this one. This is, the Eskom exemption, and Treasury saying that despite the fact that it does not have to comply with one provision of the PFMA, it says that irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure must still be detailed in the annual report. I wonder what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are emerging on that, Bongi. I wanted to understand what it enables. I was finding myself asking questions like, if you are in internal audit within Eskom or Transnet as it appears, What do you do with those instances? I mean, to me, it sounds like a very dubious instruction or exemption. You can find a mechanism to forgive under a particular procurement regime or under a particular emergency situation, to forgive instances of things, but to exempt the reporting, to me, it's very suspect. It seems like it's those kinds of things that are aimed at creating a permissive environment for rent extraction and continued corruption within these organizations.
All right, let me thank you both for your time. Do appreciate it. That was a political analyst, Dr. Ongama Mtimka, as well as Dr. Fikile Vilakazi.